know, for years, if not months, a lot of people have basically come out and said that, yeah, I would say a fair amount of people, but a lot of people have pretty much come out and said that Rarity and Sparity, as it's known to a lot of fans, would never actually happen. Even Megan McCarthy has come out and said it would never happen. But let me ask you guys this question. If Sparity, that's the code name for, or the abbreviated name, combined name for the shipping of Spike and Rarity, if that wasn't to happen, then let me ask you this. Why is it every time there's an episode that would center around Spike growing, maturing, or going through some kind of event, why is it Rarity is one of the focal points? Why is Rarity always involved? This further is exemplified in the upcoming season. Now, in case some of you don't know, recently Hasbro and DHX Media suffered a massive leak again of My Little Pony content. And not only did they suffer that massive leak, but because of it, several episodes, not fully completed, several episodes were released. Now, emphasis on the fact that they weren't fully completed, as in no background music, no sound effects, or even partially animated, or halfway animated. Other portions of it either being storyboard or work in progress. Heck, there's even an episode that's just audio only. But with that said, in this upcoming season, there's an episode that pretty much a lot of the fan base knows about now that's going to be coming. Now, it's one of the episodes that's fully animated, full length, but it's not complete. And what I mean by not complete, there is no sound effects or background music. Scenes for maybe the ending of it, but that's about it. The point is, in this upcoming episode, once again, it will center around Spike growing, evolving, and maturing. And in a sense, it will change the status quo for Spike as a character. But, once again, Rarity is a part of this. And something interesting happens with Rarity as well. She gets some kind of minor infection. And I think it's around here, if you know what I mean. But she gets some kind of minor infection. Now, with that said though, if Rarity and Spike would not happen, then why in the world would DHX Media, and no matter who the executive producer is, whether it's Lauren Faust, Megan McCarthy, or now for this upcoming season and going forward, Nicole DeBach, why would they incorporate her in these scenarios? Why couldn't it be someone else? That's what I'm wondering, folks. That's what I ask you. And that is what I want to point out as I discuss several of the episodes that basically, in my opinion, confirms that DHX Media and those in charge creatively of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic want to see a Spike Rarity pairing happen, but have only been teasing us till we get to a certain moment. And I'll discuss that in a moment, right in this video. You know, we all know that when this whole Rarity Spike situation began, it all began because Lauren Faust, and she's even gone on record by saying this, wanted to basically have Spike be the viewer's point of view. She wanted to use Spike as the viewer's perspective of when we first meet Rarity. Thus, by putting Spike in that position, it allowed us to see Rarity for the beautiful pony that she is, for the radiant beauty, if you will. Thus, Lauren Faust, I guess, at the time, unexpectedly set off a shipping in a monster or phenomenon in the form of Rarity and Spike, or Sparity. Now, I don't know if Lauren Faust has gone on record as to saying she's done this, or she expected this to happen in any interviews. But one thing's for certain. If DHX Media and Lauren Faust, or any of the creators at that time, including Megan McCarthy, who worked under Lauren at that moment, if they had no plans of this happening, then why did they follow through on it throughout why did they continue, in a sense, to follow through on it, hint at it, throughout the rest of season 1, even to the point that you had one episode where Spike tells Twilight and Pinky, and maybe even Rainbow Dash and Applejack and Fluttershy, that he has a crush on, that his secret, and the reason he acts the way he does around Rarity is because he has a crush on her. He's basically hot for her. He's crazy for her. Why would they go to those links? Why would they add that into an episode of season 1 and then follow through on it in basically season 2? In season 2, I think around the 10th episode, Secret of My Excess, Spike, of course, has a birthday that has come, and surprisingly, unlike other birthdays that he's had in the past, just with Twilight and maybe some of her friends, he ends up getting multiple gifts instead of one. And what this does is it sets off a side of Spike that is basically dragon greed, that causes him to grow unexpectedly to basically full dragon size to where all he cares about is greed, until Rarity wakes something up inside his monstrous mind and helps him revert back to normal. But here's the thing about Rarity. Rarity, in a sense, was the cause of it. Hear me out. I like Rarity just like anybody else. Firebrand, Josh Scorcher, if you will, Silver Quill. We all like Rarity. She's got that total package to her that all fans appeal to. But here's the thing about that. Rarity, in a sense, caused this to happen. Rarity appears in the beginning of the episode because she had promised Twilight she was going to come by, and Twilight was going to help her look at some books for fashion, or something like that. The moment she arrives, she spies the fire ruby that Spike has, that Spike had been saving up for his birthday. Now, some could argue that she kind of coaxed him into doing it, giving it to her, manipulated him. But here's the thing. Spike held off for a while. He held off, but yes, the words did echo in his mind. Was Rarity right? Now, Spike could have easily, as I've mentioned before and others have mentioned before, easily could have just put this to the side and continue targeting that fire ruby as his gift to himself. But something inside of him said it's better if someone like something inside of him basically said, if Rarity values this as much as she says it is, then maybe it's meant for her. Yes, what he says originally counters to what he says in a flashback, but basically Spike decides, you know what, if it means that much to Rarity, I'll let her have it, and I'll just go from there. Not knowing, as I mentioned earlier, he was going to end up getting a bunch of other gifts that would set off that greed mode, and it wouldn't be until he sees Rarity wearing the fire ruby as a necklace that he remembers who he truly is. And it's during this moment afterwards that when he reverts back to normal, that as he and Rarity are falling through the sky, that he basically gets this note, that he basically decides then and now, because just in case they don't make it, he decides he's going to let Rarity know why he did it, why he gave her the fire ruby, why he's acted the way he has around her. And just as he's about to say, I've always had a crush on you, or basically, I've always been in love with you kind of deal, which is, I guess, his way of saying, I've always been in love with you, what does Rarity do? She hushes him, and she has tears coming out of her eyes because she already knows. And she in a sense, recuperates or reciprocates, or basically returns those feelings to Spike. So, if Rarity and Spike, as an item, or as a possible couple, romantically, was never supposed to happen, then why was Secret of My Excess put in the put as the story that it was? You know, why did they dedicate an episode in season 1 to Spike admitting it? You know, his crush, his attraction to Rarity. Because in a sense, even under Lauren Faust, they had plans to do something with this pairing. But that in a sense would be continued on. Now, some might say, like Voice of Reason and Firebrand, they might say that Spike, well, I wouldn't say Firebrand, but I would say Buck Reviewer, Buck Brony, if you will, and Voice of Reason, you know, would say that in Dragon Quest, Rarity comes off more as a mother-like figure. But Voice of Reason is the one that comes out and says, you know, talks about a certain scene that could have transitioned a lot better without Spike feeling chastinated or teased by his friends, and then he puts in keyword possible girlfriend, which indicates Rarity. And why would Rarity be the one to basically join alongside Rainbow Dash and Twilight in following Spike? Why would she even ask Twilight, oh, we're following him, right? Why would she be more concerned? Yeah, you could say that's kind of a motherly-like deal, that's fine, but it's more of a deal of someone that truly deeply cares for someone, probably beyond friendship. So I ask you this, if this wasn't supposed to happen, why did they do this? Why did they do all this within the first few seasons? Why did they have Rarity basically threaten the Dragon Bullies that if they harm Spike, she would rip them to shreds? She'd basically go Chuck Norris on the butt, if you will, or Bruce Lee, or whatever you want to call it, on the butts. Because of the fact that, in my opinion, and I think anybody would share this sentiment, Hasbro, DHX, and those working on the series at the time, Lauren Faust, Megan McCarthy, all had plans to go in the direction of Rarity and Spike. That, in my opinion, that's what they were planning to do. And this would be further indicated later on. Now, when I talk about that this would be explored further on, Season 3's opening basically kind of gives us that idea. Basically, in Season 3, The Crystal Empire, we find out basically that a new threat is returning after a certain spell that the crystal. Well, basically we find out that the Crystal Empire is returning after a several centuries, decades in exile, or whatever, and that Cadence and Shining Armor are said to be the rulers. Cadence, of course, is obviously prophesied to be the Crystal Princess. But here's something that really that not a lot of people overlook because it's a prominent point. The Crystal Empire is a 2-part season opener. Now, at the end, during the climax of part 2, Spike ends up being the one that saves the Crystal Empire. But here's the deal. When Spike basically reveals that, hey, he has the Crystal Heart because Twilight gets imprisoned, is basically sacrificing her own freedom to ensure that Spike gets that Crystal Heart to Cadence. What happened? Who's the first to hear Spike say, hey, I got the Crystal Heart? Who's the first one to acknowledge acknowledge Spike saying that he has the crystal heart. Rarity. Rarity is the first one. Then, who's the one that fears that Spike's gonna die the moment he falls off a cliff? Rarity. She calls him Spikey Wikey, which he sees at. The point being that even in the Crystal Empire, Rarity and Spike, disparity shipping is teased, is hinted at. There's even points to where she's, I think through several screenshots, she is hugging Spike close to her. The point being, and I think it happened throughout season 3 as well, that they still hinted that there was something between Rarity and Spike. Now mind you, this is after Lauren Faust decided to step away and Megan McCarthy stepped forward. The same Megan McCarthy that would go on and say that Spike and Rarity would never happen. Alright, that might be true, but even if that is true, why continuously put those scenarios in episodes throughout season 3? I'm just curious, I'm just wondering, I'm just asking that. I'm just asking, I'm just curious about that. Heck, you want to know how much Spike and Rarity care for each other? Rarity, whether you look at it like, oh, she's treating him like a slave and all that, she's using, manipulating him, Rarity always calls upon Spike. Yes, just like her, he's an expert in jewels. Oils and everything. But, here's another indication. When you get later on into season 4, Spike cares about Rarity so much that he's willing to sacrifice his own love for her to make sure she's happy. That's what he does. That's what he did, I should say. He's generous enough to say, you know what, Rarity, you could say that I don't know what it's like to be in love, out of emotion, but he's willing to say, but he's also willing to say, but I'm going to put that feeling that I have for you aside to make sure you're happy. That's what he does. That's what he does. Now you might indicate that Rarity doesn't do anything for him in return, but in a way she does. She does help him out. Heck, even in a dog and pony show, which I think was season 1, she generously gives him a gem because he wanted to go after her. He wanted to go rescue her. And she didn't have to do that. The point is, even though season 4 may or may not have hinted at it as much, as well as season 3, the hints and moments were still there. Same with season 5. Season 5 had the moments and stuff there as well. Even though they weren't shown as much, season 3 to 5 had the moments, had their hints, and basically indicated that DHX and the people behind MLP always had something planted and basically set up for these two in the near future. Heck, Rarity in like, what is it, episode 13 of season 5 or something like that, has to turn on the charms to get Spike to distract Twilight from what they're doing. I'm just saying. And Spike could have easily said, I'm not falling for that, but he did it anyway. Why? Because there is something there. He could have fought it, but there's something there. Now, here's another indication. Season 6, Gauntlet of Fire, is a big example. Heck, Kichi of the Rift Cafe even pointed this out. When Spike started to go through his first dragon sense, which was the call of the Dragon Lord, where he was glowing, Rarity could have easily stopped at a place, showered, and then took Spike to Twilight. No, she decided, I'm taking you immediately straight to Twilight. Something's not right. And the thing is, she could have easily backed out going to the Dragonlands with Twilight and Spike, but she didn't. Even she's the one that argues, or kind of counters Spike by saying, what do you mean you have to win the gauntlet? Like she's saying, you can't do this. I don't want you to do this. I care too much about you to do this. You get the idea of what I'm saying? The point is, the moments were there. That is just like Secret of My Success. And then, of course, Season 7 had their moments as well, and hints. And then you take a look at the upcoming season, and it pretty much indicates that Rarity and Spike, the disparity shipping, was meant to happen. But here's the question. Why hasn't the trigger been pulled? And when or if will it be pulled? That's what I'll answer next. As I said, why don't they just, as I said, with everything that they have done, it's more along the lines of the question being, you tease it, you basically put it right in our faces, like I say, you tease it, you hint at it, you basically, even though you weren't, totally focused on it very much throughout seasons 3, 4, and 5, except for, like I said, towards the climax of the Crystal Empire 2-parter, and then episode 13, I believe, of season 5, and then somewhat in season 4, and so on. And then you take a look at season 6, and then you kind of get that hint a little bit as well in season 7 at times. And then you take a look at season 8, I should say. I was going to say the title name, which I'm pretty sure a lot of people know about by now. Take a look at what's coming up in season 8, and it's like, you're doing all this, so if you're going to continuously tease it, and even though, with all due respect, you come out, if you're an executive producer or not, or such, and you come out and say, no, it'll never happen, then why continuously tease it if it's not going to happen? Why do that? Why continuously tease it and not pull the trigger on whether or not it's going to be a reality? And the truth is, because in my opinion, my theory and the truth of the matter on it is, I think, in a sense, those at DHX Media, whether it's Megan McCarthy, Nicole Duboc, Josh Haber, M.A. Larson, Christine and Joanne, the lady writers, Jason Teresen, doesn't matter. It seems to me that they enjoy the whole interaction that they put Spike and Rarity in with each other, because they know fans like it as well, and the fans want to see more. But as much as they know that fans want to see more, and as much as they enjoy that interaction that they put between these two characters throughout the series and in certain episodes, the question anybody would have is, why don't you just pull the trigger on either yay or nay? Here's why. Because they know if they pull the trigger on nay, it's not going to be a very popular decision. True, a lot of fans might say, okay, finally they've put that they finally addressed that, gave us a final answer, put it to the side, finally gave us an answer and put it to the side, and now we can move on. But they also know that if they pull the trigger on yay, then a majority of the fan base will be happy about what they see, about what they're finally getting, about Spike and Rarity finally becoming an item of some sorts, that, well, they realize that not only would they have a majority, probably more so, basically a more bigger majority of the fan base that would enjoy seeing that happen, they also know that they might get some negative feedback from other portions of the fan base that are like, really? You're actually going to go with this? So that's why I believe they haven't pulled the trigger. But here's my theory as to when I think they will pull the trigger. I think they will pull the trigger if season 9 is the last season. If season 9 is the last season, then that is when they will pull the trigger. And my estimation, my theory is this. You've hinted at it since the beginning. You've dedicated several episodes to the whole scenario at times. You know, Secret of My Excess, Dragon Quest, Gauntlet of Fire. You've hinted at it throughout multiple seasons with moments here and there. You know, now you're basically hinting at it again with, with the upcoming season. I mean, heck, you have Spike and Rarity's throne chairs or cutie map chairs that they sit at at the cutie map table at Twilight's Castle. You have them basically next to each other. As far as we know, you have them next to each other. So, so my theory is I believe they are going to pull the trigger on a yay in the final season. Here's why. Knowing it's the last season basically indicates that you could do whatever, basically indicates, in my opinion, an old theory, an old myth, legend in the entertainment business. Whether it's movies, comics, what have you. If you're in the final season or final issue in the case of a comic, then you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can pretty much do whatever you want or whatever the fans want. And in my opinion, season 9 is when they're going to finally make the Rarity Spike situation a reality. That's when they're going to do it. Not, this upcoming season, but they're going to do it in season 9. Why? Because that's the last season of Friendship is Magic as far as we know. So if it's technically the last season, then that is basically going to be the season where, just like with a final issue of a comic, or final few issues of a comic, you could pretty much do whatever you want to do. The same thing with the final thing of a movie. You want to go balls to the wall, excuse my language for saying that, with what you want to do in a movie, as well as give the fans, maybe the viewers, what they've been wanting to see, then that's your opportunity to do it. Take a look at Avengers Infinity War. Avengers Infinity War is giving the fans what they want, but we also know they're going to go balls to the wall with it. Because it, along with the second Infinity movie that follows, is going to give us everything we want, but it's basically going to be what the directors, the people behind the MCU have been wanting to go and do for quite some time, and that's literally just throw it all out there. And to me, when I look at Rarity and Spike, if you're going to be going on a near decade, you might as well finally go in a positive direction. And that positive direction, in my opinion, I believe will be, yes, it's going to happen, but it's going to happen in the season where pretty much they will do whatever they can do, not just to get it off their chest, but to give the fans what they want. Which is why I go back to what I said about season 9 if it's the last season. I said if it's the last season in one of my live streams, I said they gotta make it about the fans. And one way you make it about the fans is you give them what they want. And one of the things the majority of the fan base wants, whether anybody wants to deny it or not, is they want to see Spike and Rarity together, because you've been building on it since episode 1, since season 1. You've been teasing at it. You've, like I said, dedicated episodes sort of around it to it, as well as with the upcoming season. So why not finally give them what they want? That's why I believe they have not yet pulled the trigger, but when I do believe they're going to do it. You know, that's why they're going to pull it, and when they're going to pull the trigger on the Rarity Spike relationship, and why, in my opinion, my theoriness on this, as to, you know, as to why season 9 is, or that's season 9, but as to why Spike and Rarity will become an item. They will become a reality. You've been building on it and building on it and building on it. This is going to be an opportunity to finally bring it full circle. And like I said, if season 9 is the last season, what do you got to lose? You know what I'm saying? Because whether, like I said, whether people want to admit it or not, there is a majority of the fan base out there that wants to see this become a reality. They are out there. They want to see it happen. They want to see they want to see these two come together, because the story is there, especially for Rarity. You know, Rarity's always looking for her Prince Charming. Guess what? Her Prince Charming's always been there in the form of Spike. So that's why I believe season 9 is going to be the season they pull the trigger, and they do it in a positive way.